Excited to have Peggy Sweeny-McDonald back on Studio 10. You may have caught her segment earlier where we talked about your fantastic book, Meanwhile Back at Cafe Du Monde. Peggy, good to see you.
It's great to see you again.
And you brought along a friend, Stuart McDonald.
No relation.
No relation. That is right. The last name is both McDonald. Okay, no relation though, but we are going to cook something from your fantastic book. What are we going to make this morning, Peggy?
Well, we're making Shrimp Clemenceau. The book has 67 life stories about food, and a lot of those foodies gave me recipes. This is Miss Leah Chase, who's legendary. She is the queen of Creole food. Her restaurant is Chase in New Orleans. So she gave me her recipe and her beautiful story in this book that you'll love. But it's her recipe for Shrimp Clemenceau, which she made famous, and what she says, this recipe, it doesn't take very long. It's pretty simple, delicious, and people will think you are in the kitchen cooking all day long. So it really is a treat, and it's just yummy shrimp and potatoes and garlic, and butter, of course, makes everything great, right?
It always does. You know, that sounds fantastic. We'll get to more of the cooking in just a minute. But first, tell us a little bit more about the book. Basically, all the stories in there.
Yes, it's life stories about food based on a show that I do, a live show, kind of like reality dinner theater, where people come together in a restaurant. I usually have 8 to 10 people who are on stage and tell a life story about food. Meanwhile, Back at Cafe Du Monde is my story, and it's all about no matter where I live, no matter what's going on in my life, I always end up back at Cafe Du Monde taking life one beignet at a time.
Well, it's a good place to wind up. So famous, a fantastic spot in New Orleans. All right, Stuart, you are here for the cooking portion of it. What are we going to do to get started here, buddy?
We're going to melt some butter.
We're going to melt some butter. Always a good place to start.
Yeah, I'm going to drop a little butter in there. And you know, Peggy and I met a couple years ago out in Los Angeles, the other LA.
Sure.
And
At the Tasty Awards.
Right, at the Tasty Awards. And it just so happened that all the people I made friends with out there were from the South.
Oh, really?
Peggy was from Louisiana, was from Alabama. Our friend Susan Irby was from Georgia. And
The
Sarah,
bikini chef.
yeah, and Sarah O'Donnell, who has a web show called Average Betty, is from Tallahassee.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
And also Sarah O'Donnell, not related to McDonald or Donald. And then now that my butter's melted, I'm just going to come in. We've got some potatoes that we've diced up.
Right.
And that is the longest cooking part of this whole deal, is the 5 minutes or so it takes to cook these potatoes.
Well, this would be a perfect time then to take a short break so you can work on those potatoes. And when we come back, we will continue to work on our Shrimp Clemenceau and tell you more about Meanwhile Back at Cafe Du Monde.
Morning, we have Peggy McDonald and also Stuart McDonald joining us, making something that smells so incredible. What is the sweet smell?
That's actually, you're picking up the little hints from the garlic that I just added.
Wow.
And garlic actually turns kind of sweet once it starts cooking.
So unusual. I guess it's just the way it's mixing with the butter and the potatoes.
Yeah, and it's real butter too.
Oh, so tell everybody what you're making.
It's Shrimp Clemenceau. It's a Leah Chase recipe. And for anyone that's seen The Princess and the Frog by Disney, the lead character was based on Leah Chase's real life. And as a teenager, took over the family restaurant and turned it into an icon. And she was one of the guests at one of Peggy's show, or more than one show.
Yeah, she did 2 of the Meanwhile Back at Cafe Du Monde shows where she shared her life story, I Say Like This. And she's just amazing. She's going to be 90 in January. She's just a legend. Her grandson is also in the book, Dookie the Fourth, Edgar Chase, and his story is all about learning how to cook in his grandmother's kitchen. And it's called Introduction to Leah's Kitchen. And then she sent him to Cordon Bleu in Paris. So he cooks with her. She still fries chicken in that restaurant every day. So if you've never been to her restaurant, you need to go. Dookie Chase in New Orleans. So she's one of the storytellers, and she's just the most amazing person. She comes and walks around the dining room. So if you go have lunch there, you definitely want to meet her. And if you have the book, you can go get her to sign her page, because she loves the book. She was really proud.
I'm going to put that on the list. And I think so many times we tend to forget, because I'm guilty of it. New Orleans really isn't that far away. I mean, if you just want to take a drive over one Saturday and then go have lunch and walk around, it really would make a wonderful day, and to see some of these great restaurants.
And end up at Cafe Du Monde.
There you go, because you have to have some of the beignets.
Meanwhile Back at Cafe Du Monde. I know, which is great because because they're celebrating their 150th anniversary this year. So they wrote the foreword to the book, Karen Benroot, and also gave us their history and vintage pictures, which is in the book. So it's a lot to, this book is all about family and friends and life and food and love. And, I have Stuart here who lives in Mobile. When I was coming over to do this book signing that I'm doing, I wanted to, ask a local chef to join me to cook some of these recipes. So here we are making the shrimp clemenceau.
There it is.
Yeah, and it's so easy, all I've done after I've cooked the potatoes, I added the garlic. I just added some shrimp and some mushroom. We're going to give it just a few more minutes like that. And then I guess we'll finish up in the next segment.
Sounds good. And the potatoes, you mentioned you cook those first with the garlic and the butter. How much longer do the potatoes need to cook than the other ingredients?
Well, you start them about 5 minutes before you start everything else.
I mean, it's so easy, and she's had this recipe, it's been 40 years ago she created it, and she just said, what's so great about it is simple. You can add chicken instead of shrimp. You can add wine, which we will be adding wine, right? Stuart likes to cook with wine. And so it's just a simple recipe. I mean, you could probably add other vegetables too, but she uses the mushrooms and the peas and the fresh parsley, and it's just really yummy, really delicious. With a green salad and some French bread, you have a perfect meal.
Yeah, it sounds like it. All right, so we're going to let this continue cooking. In the meantime, be sure you log on to our website, Studio 10 tab on fox10tv.com. You're going to want to get this recipe. We'll see how it all turns out when we come back to our Great Kitchen Set in just a few minutes. Back once again to our Great Kitchen Set here on Studio 10. Thank you so much for joining us this morning with Stuart McDonald and also Peggy McDonald finishing things up here in the kitchen. It's smelling great.
Thank you. Well, what I did while we were gone is I added some of the English peas and a little bit of our white wine and some of our parsley, and I'm just let all of that come to temperature, and we're ready to serve this up.
All right, and while you're doing that, tell us a little bit about the restaurant.
Little House Midtown. A lot of people will remember Little House Bistro that was out in Crawford.
Right.
The suburb of Sims. And we decided we were going to move it down to the Loop area to bring our flavors, our contemporary Southern cuisine to a broader spectrum of Mobilians, and it's really been doing great. They love our lunches. Our lunch and our dinner menus are totally different, which means we have to take a little break in between to swap everything over. But Peggy joined us for dinner last night.
Yes, we drove over, my mom and dad from Baton Rouge, and we joined them for dinner, and the seafood pot pie and the mac and cheese with truffle oil. Oh my God, I'm still like craving all that wonderful food. I would love to go back for lunch, but I have to watch my eating after I'm having a few bites of this shrimp clemenceau this morning.
To be all kinds of things. Now, Peggy, we want to make sure that everybody knows about you and about your book, Meanwhile Back at Cafe Du Monde. Tell us more about that for anybody who may be just joining us.
Well, it started as a show, a live show where people came to restaurants and shared a life story about food. We did 32 shows from all around Louisiana, Mississippi, and California with over 230 people sharing their food stories on stage while people ate and drank. And it just really, it grew, as I like to say, it snowballed. The beignet got bigger and bigger and sweeter and sweeter. And my story is the title monologue, all about no matter where I live, no matter what's going on in my life, I always end up back at Cafe Du Monde, taking life one beignet at a time. But everybody has a Cafe Du Monde. Really, it's just a metaphor for that place, your comfort food place. And everyone has a Cafe Du Monde, either in their hometown or where they grew up. That place when you get back home to visit your parents, you're like, I got to go to this restaurant.
Sure.
And you know what you're ordering, you know it's delicious, and you know you're with good friends and family taking life one beignet at a time.
A lot of really interesting and fun things in your book. How can we get your book?
Well, the book is at Barnes & Noble. It's on Amazon. It was #1 on Amazon for hot new releases for Louisiana Books since July, and it just came out in September. So it's a great holiday gift. Everyone loves it because there's 67 stories about food, but it's not just restaurateurs and chefs. It's all kinds of people, actors, writers, politicians, musicians, and home cooks like myself. And it's just really fun. And we introduce everybody in the show. If you were a food, what would you be and why? And so that's on everybody's chapters. And then there's lots of great recipes. Besides the shrimp clemenceau, We have all kinds of yummy recipes, and you'll recognize a lot of the people. We have Todd Graves, who created Raising Cane's. His story of how he created Cane's is amazing. Just, you know, all kinds of really fun stories, and people pick this book up and they're like, oh my gosh, this is such a great book. It really is fun, and I think everyone's going to love it.
All right, so you can get more information about the book, and also you can get this recipe on our website, Studio 10 tab on fox10tv.com. Thank you both so much for being here this morning.